Welcome to Page One, the show for writers with the reader in mind. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everyone, welcome to Page One. I'm Zita Christian. My guest tonight is a New York Times best-selling co-author. He's a novelist himself. He's the former president of Avon Books, publisher of Avon Books, and the former publisher of Berkeley Books. He is now also the publisher of The Story Plant and Fiction Studio Books. I know him as the president of Novelists, Inc., an organization known in the industry as NINC. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Please join me in welcoming Lou Aronica. Lou, thanks for making the trip.
Pleasure.
It's really good to have you on the show. And with your background, you certainly come well equipped to be the president of an organization for writers. So for people who don't know about Novelists, Inc., and I'm afraid that there might be a few out there, could you tell us some basics about the organization? What's the basics?
Yeah, NINC's been around for a couple of decades. It was founded as a way to create a writers' organization that was purely focused on professional writers, because in the fiction area, most organizations have both professional writers and non-professionals.
Yes.
And the founders felt that the concerns of professional writers were different and needed sort of special attention, and they had to be separated out in some way. And so they founded the program, the organization, based on that. And for the last 20-something years, we've really been dealing with the issues of books and book publishing and that sort of thing at sort of an elevated level, because everybody in the organization is working at a pretty high level. So you can get past the basic issues, the basic concerns. How do I get published?
Right. Where do you get your ideas?
Right. Exactly. That kind of thing,
Yeah.
and move right on into the tough stuff. And that, I think, has made this a really fantastic organization. It's the only writers' organization I've ever been involved with.
Well, so who does belong to NINC? You belong to NINC and I belong to NINC, but who
Yes,
else?
we do.
How do you get into NINC?
You have to have published 2 novels professionally, and that has evolved in the last couple of years, how we define that. But you have to have proven that you have professional status with 2 full-length novels, and then after that, you can whatever you do beyond that is gravy.
And speaking of beyond that, I know that because I know the organization is small enough that people get to know each other on a personal basis, and I know that many of the people in the organization write things in addition to fiction. No,
Yes.
I write nonfiction. I've written a play and some other things, and I know that there are also people in the book who are writing, graphic novels, short fiction, poetry,
Right.
and some in academia. So
Yes.
there's quite a variety. The scope of the genre. When you agreed to come on the show, I thought this is going to be so cool, because the graphic that I show at the beginning of the show, the Page One that my son-in-law created, to me that's NINC.
That's NINC. It pretty much is.
All of those little things in the background. That's what the members write.
Yeah, I think we probably have more romance writers than anything else, because the organization was founded by romance writers. But we have a very large group of mystery writers. We have a significant number of writers for young adult, a significant number of science fiction and fantasy writers, and it keeps evolving. One of the things that is a little unusual about the organization, and having me as the president, is that there aren't that many guys in it right now. But we're working on that.
Yes.
We've been adding guys, and so that I think is part of the whole effort to sort of expand the range, because it's an interesting moment in publishing, and the whole idea of strict genre definition is really breaking down, and because of that, it's important for our organization to represent as many different kinds of writing as we can.
I want to touch on something that and something you said earlier about the fact that everybody, the members in the organization, we're all interested in the business aspect, and this isn't a matter how do I get an agent?
Right.
Everybody is beyond that. So because they are all professionals, because we are all professional writers, what's in it for them? If people have already made it, what's in it for them?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think one is the support of your peers, which is a tremendously important thing. I mean, the only reason I became a member of NINC was because I wanted to be able to talk to other people who are going through what writers go through. Because just because you've made it doesn't mean that you've got it made.
That's right.
And so so it's critical that you be able to share your concerns and your triumphs and all of that with other people who are genuinely your peers. But I think the most significant thing, and I think it's really, really critical right now, is that NINC offers a level of discourse that's simply higher than most other writers' organizations. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to sell NINC, but simply because the fact that we're only professionals means that we're talking from a level of experience that's elevated. And we're talking about issues that matter to people who consider writing a career, as opposed to something that's a hobby, an aspiration, that sort of thing. And I think when you do that, when your entire organization is thinking that way, you talk about things in a different way than you would otherwise.
That reminds me too. I know that on NINC, there are members, committees and individuals who are working on particular advocacy issues. I know there was a piece on contracts language on vanity publishing, which I'm going to get into a little more later, and just on the publishing industry in general. And the information is very solid. I want to clarify something though before we go along, because I'm thinking I bet there's some people in the audience who are going, wait a minute. If he was the former publisher of Avon Books and Berkeley Books, but you have to have 2 novels, professional novels written in order to be a member, did you get some dispensation, or are you also?
Not at all. No, actually, it was very funny that you asked that, because I had published my first novel, and Steve Womack, who was a former president of NINC, reminded me about the organization, because I was actually at the very, very first Novelist Inc. conference as a publisher. And then, things happen and you just don't.
Life.
Right.
Yeah.
And he reminded me about NINC, and I thought, I think I could join this group. I think this would be a good thing to join. And of course, there is that requirement that you have 2 books.
2.
And my second book was finished, and it was in production and all of that, but it hadn't been published yet. But I thought, they know me, this is not a problem. And I sent in my application, and I got a note back from the membership chair saying, we'd be delighted to have you, but your book's not out yet, so we can't have you now. Please get back to us when your book is out. So no, I definitely didn't get any special dispensation.
I remember that process after I had the first one, and I was so excited, and at the very top of my list was, I'm going to be able to join NINC.
Right.
But I had to wait. I
Yeah.
had to wait for that second one.
I did too.
that was agonizing. Specifics, some really cool specifics for the members. I know that we have a monthly newsletter.
Yes.
Which is chock full of information.
Yes, it is.
And I want to let people know too, if you're thinking about NINC, if you want more information, I know on the website there is a little place to click, and you can get a sample of a recent newsletter, which is wonderful. It's an industry treasure all by itself.
It's a great organization. Mariana Jameson, who's our newsletter editor, does a sensational job of just constantly going after people to get information that actually matters. She's running a great series right now on small publishers that I think is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a discount on personalized book scan reports.
Yes.
So for those authors who have books out there and you want to know what's going on with my book, which I think is a very great tool. And there's many other things too, but one of the key ones I wanted to talk about is the opportunity for some of the authors to participate in anthology projects.
Yes.
Because NINC has
very exciting.
A big anthology project that just came out. So it's called Cast of Characters, just came out last month.
Yes.
Tell us about it, please.
It was something that was many years in the the making, including several years before I got started. There's been a conversation about having anthologies for quite some time in the organization, but we finally were able to get it rolling. And the board, last year's board, of which I was a member, decided that we really wanted to do it in as big a way as we could. So rather than doing something that was genre related or that was limited to a handful of writers, we invited a significant number of writers to contribute, and what we got was a collection of 28 stories, all original, never before published. 11 of them are by New York Times bestselling authors. Wow. The other 17 are by pretty impressive authors as well, and it runs the gamut, from romance to suspense to mystery to paranormal to fantasy. I mean, it's just all over the place, and that was intentional. We wanted it to show the breadth of the organization and to show the breadth of the reading experience, because I think it's kind of this artificial notion that people read a kind of book. Most fiction readers don't read a kind of book. Right. And the key point that we're trying to make in naming the book Cast of Characters was that if you have great characters, if you have really interesting people to read about, readers will follow the author to places where they wouldn't necessarily have gone otherwise. And so, I think it's an extraordinary collection. It's almost 500 pages long, and it's just this big, hefty thing. And the writers really delivered. I mean, I could see how hard everybody wanted to make this first book great.
Now, you edited
I did.
the book. And the book itself, Cast of Characters, I know I downloaded an e-version because I just got one of those new readers at holidays, and I wanted to put something extra special on. But it's also available in print form as well.
It's available in trade paperback.
So I wanted to go over, I'm not going to ask you to name all the names of everyone who's in there, but I did write them down. And I'm just going to go over a few of them here. Catherine Anderson, Joe Beverly, Barbara Breton, Carol Nelson Douglas, Heather Graham and Jason Possessore, Vicki Hines, Mariana Johnson, Wayne Jordan, Ashley McConnell, Julie Ortolan, Laura Resnick, Patricia Rice, Deb Stover, Karen Tintori, Diane Whiteside, Steve Womack, and there are others. I didn't get all of them in there, but that is quite an impressive.
It is. It's
list.
A great collection, and there were several stories in the book that were events of some sort. The first time a writer wrote a contemporary story, for instance, or the first, or the reintroduction of characters that had been favorites from a long time ago that the writer hadn't written about for a while. Yeah, the writers really came through. I mean, they really, really wanted this to be special. They didn't want it to just be a collection of stories.
And it is, you mentioned the heft of it. I don't have the print one with me, but it's about this thick.
Yeah, it's really
and
big.
it's substantial,
Yeah.
and would make a great Mother's Day gift.
It
as
would.
well.
It would be a great Mother's Day gift.
So if people are watching, people who have their 2 books professionally published, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I bet it's just outrageous to join this organization, the dues are
$65.
$65.
Yeah. Plus, there is a little initiation fee, but it's like $15 or something.
Yeah, when you first get in. I want to talk a little bit about the conference. Conference. Now, last fall there was a conference in Tampa.
Yes.
That's where you and I sat down and talked about doing a show about Novelists Inc. And this coming fall of 2012, there's a conference in White Plains, New York, October 25 to 28. Now that conference I know is for members only, but is there going to be?
Well, there is, yes. It's for members and industry professionals only. But the day before the conference, we're doing something that we call First Word, which will be open to the public, and it'll be a series of panels, and it's going to be quite dramatic.
Can you give us a hint?
Well, I can. The people who have agreed who have agreed to join us on the panels so far include Robert Gottlieb, who's one of the major agents in the field, Julia Koblenz, who's an executive at Barnes & Noble. I'm going to get this. Dominique Rocca, who's the publisher the president of Source Books, and several others. Rather than trying to name all of them, I'll stop there. But the format is actually quite fascinating, because what we're going to do is have 4 topic-driven panels about key things that are happening in the industry, and we're going to keep them very focused and keep them to about an hour, and we're not allowing any questions during this time. We're just going to allow the panelists to speak, to converse with each other and that sort of thing. There'll be some moderating going on, but other than that, no questions. And then in the afternoon, we're going to take this entire group of a dozen or so serious professionals in the industry, major players in the industry, put them up on the panel and allow the audience to ask any questions about the industry they want.
They know this.
They do know this, and they've agreed to do it. In fact.
Right. Good.
So it's going to be really exciting, because I'm sure the conversation is going to go off in directions that nobody could anticipate. I'm sure some of the questions will actually come from the panel, and it'll be very dramatic.
Well, I remember when we were sitting at the conference that Sunday morning in Tampa, and the sparkle, the buzz went around the room when you said that for this conference in the fall of 2012, you were going to call in some favors.
Yes,
from people in the industry, and we all thought, okay, this is going to be really, really good.
and there are quite a number of people are going to be there only for a day or so. Mm-hmm. We have a level of featured guest. All those people I mentioned are featured guests, and those people have agreed to stay with us the entire time, which is pretty exciting, because they'll just be hanging out and talking to the writers and that sort of thing. But there'll also be quite a number of major industry professionals who will be there for a day, someplace along the line. Because the upside and the downside of having it in the New York area is that it's local, so they'll come, but they don't necessarily want to spend the entire time. Yeah. But there will be quite a group of attendees.
Good. That sounds great. And that brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight, and that is changes in the industry and publishing. Oh my gosh, what a time we're in tonight.
Yes,
and I thought you, as president of Novelists, Inc., and also with your history in publishing and with your own writing, you're in a key position to give us some...
I'm at the crossroads.
You really are. Some good information.
It's a pretty windy place.
So that's a good statement. It's a pretty windy place. And my question is it all doom and gloom? Is there some... No,
just the opposite.
Good. Tell me about it.
No, I actually think it's just the opposite with a significant caveat.
Okay.
The business is healthier overall than it has been in a very long time. Easily 10 years. You see publishers, annual reports coming out, and all of them are showing, big profitable years. And that's meaningful, because I think one of the concerns about the changes in the industry was that it was going to adversely affect publishers, and it doesn't seem to be, at least not in the way we thought. There's this whole new, very exciting group of indie publishers coming out who are doing really, really good things. And again, Mariana is featuring some of these people on the
newsletter.
In the NINC newsletter. But just to name one of them, if I could, there's a publisher called Bell and Bell Bridge, 2 different imprints of the same organization, that are doing really inspired publishing at a very small level. And so they only publish a handful of books, but they publish them really well. And that kind of thing was impossible. The barriers to entry were so high, even 5 years ago, that it would have been unrealistic for a publisher like Bell to come along. But now they're doing great work for their writers, and they're in many ways doing a better job than many of the larger houses could have done. So that whole thing is working and working well. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the room to publish oneself legitimately, and actually have an impact and actually make some money out of it, is far greater than it's ever been before. Because again, those barriers to entry aren't there. I remember, a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was talking to someone about a novel I had just started writing that I knew was going to be difficult to publish traditionally because it crossed several genres. And because of my publishing background, I thought, I know exactly what to do with this book, but it's going to cost so much to do it properly that I don't think I can pull it off. I'm just going to keep writing the book because I have to write the book, but I don't know what's going to happen. And then this person said to me, well, what would it cost to do this book responsibly? And I thought, probably cost about $150,000 just to get it into the marketplace.
Wow.
That is completely not true anymore. You can do a really effective, dramatic publication for less than $10,000.
And you're talking because of electronic publishing.
Because of electronic publishing, because of the various components of digital publishing, not only ebooks, but also print-on-demand paperbacks, which are significantly better than they were, and significantly more ubiquitous than they were, and inexpensive enough now that the consumer doesn't have to contribute to your effort to do it. You can price the books relatively similar to the price of a regular paperback.
But Lou, the criticism that I hear so often about ebooks in general is that they've not gone through a strong editorial process. Even those ebooks, even the ones that some of the major publishers put out there a while ago, I don't know how to phrase it, but they...
Well, here's the thing. and this is, I'm hoping that this will not be true 6 months from now.
Okay.
I think what happened with digital surprised a number of us because the editorial thing is twofold. The editorial thing on the self-publishing side is an issue because a lot of writers don't think that they need to take things through the professional process. Now, when I say it costs $10,000 to publish a book, there are a lot of people who are publishing books for significantly less than that. But one of the reasons they do, one of the ways they can do that is they're not hiring a professional editor, they're not hiring a copy editor, they're not hiring a proofreader, they're not hiring a professional designer to do the cover, and so they're slipping in with subpar material, and that's a problem because on the surface it looks just like the other stuff. So that's issue number one,
right,
which is that there are a lot of books going out there that are just under-edited. However, the issue that you're referring to is a real issue and one that people are sort of scrambling to address right now, which is that digital conversion wasn't as seamless as all of us hoped. I had an experience, my publishing company, The Story Plant. We started doing ebooks basically the second the Kindle came out, and I'm speaking of the Kindle because not because I'm suggesting that anybody focus on the Kindle, but because it was the first. It was the thing that really changed the game. I mean, Sony had been out already, but it didn't really affect the market in any meaningful way. But we were publishing books, and we had a digital conversion house, and they promised that the high level of fidelity to the conversion and that sort of thing. And because nobody really knew whether the market was going to take off or not, we just sort of trusted that the conversion would be what they said it was going to be. And we published a few books, a few ebooks, and then the market really exploded. Yeah. And suddenly we discovered, because the audience let us know, that the conversion wasn't nearly as good as we thought it was. And when you were selling a couple of hundred copies, nobody was really yelling about it. But suddenly, when you were selling tens of thousands of copies, people were complaining, rightfully. Mm-hmm. And so what's happening is that we're going back, we're reconverting our backlist right now, which is an expensive process, and now we're proofreading those. We had always had proofreaders on board for print. But now what's become clear is that even after you've copy edited and proofread the print edition, when you go into the conversion side, you have to then proofread the conversion all over again because little glitchy things happen.
Yes.
That that are completely irrational and that they're impossible to look out for because they don't happen with any level of consistency. So you really just have to go in and
do it.
and reread the entire thing. And that's a step in the process that publishers are only now really starting to take.
Well, speaking of the publishers, speaking of some of the major print publishers who have had their own a division, an imprint, an arm of what some people are calling a farm system,
right,
where someone can send in their manuscript, they're not having to pay, but they're not getting strong editorial contribution
or marketing.
And we've only got about 2 minutes left, Lou. So tell me, this new thing, Pocket Star from Simon & Schuster, why is that different?
Well, we'll see if it's different.
Okay.
It's not clear. What was different about it was the way it was announced. First of all, Pocket Star is an imprint. They're bringing back an imprint from the mass market heyday. There was a period where publishers were launching multiple imprints. So Pocket had their imprint, and then they launched the Pocket Star imprint because the mass market was large enough that you could actually, there was more capacity to publish more books. And then that stopped being true when they closed down the program and that sort of thing. But the fact that they're calling this program Pocket Star as opposed to some new name suggests to me that they're going to be thinking about this imprint the way mass market publishers used to think about mass market publishing.
Wonderful.
And if that's true, that's a huge thing because nobody else, none of these other imprints really are thinking that way. And if Pocket has decided to approach it that way, which means really publishing the books and really marketing them aggressively and that sort of thing, it's major news.
Lou, on that very optimistic note, we have just about 30 seconds left, and I want to ask you, with all of this change that has gone on in the past year, or past years, decade or so, what, if anything, has not changed?
The reader. The reader hasn't changed at all. Why people love to read books, and especially why they love to read fiction, hasn't changed at all. And it's an important thing for us to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You can't confuse the tools with the medium. The reader loves to read for the same reason they always love to read, and how they get the material is just business. And we should never forget that.
Thank you. And on that very, very optimistic note, thanks very much for being
Pleasure.
with us tonight.
Pleasure.
And let me also say thank you to my crew. And as always, I'll close with the words of the fantasy writer Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories." So find your story and find a way to tell it. And do join us again next time. Thank you.
Food for the crew and guests was provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Be sure to send your writing questions and your comments on the book club selection to Zita at Page 1, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut, 06045-1515, or send an email to Zita at page1tv.com.